Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning back in. I've got a really good question from a subscriber today that I want to talk about. Before I get into it, I just want to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. If you're a subscriber, you get automatically entered into my monthly prize drawings for sponsor products. So guys, hit that subscribe button. There's really no reason not to. Also, if you're looking for tackle, go to my description and hit the link to therealshot.com. That's a tackle store here in Wisconsin that has a great selection of tackle. If you use the discount code STEFAN10 at checkout, you'll save 10% off your order, and it helps the channel out, helps the local shop out, and you get 10% off your order. So everyone makes out on the process. So the question that I want to talk about today has to do with how do you locate fish on big featureless bodies of water that, in the springtime, it seems like you can find the fish really easily. The fish are up shallow and it seems like everyone catches them. And then once the spawn's over, it seems like those fish just vanish. So I'm talking about lakes, that are kind of like Lake St. Clair, Lake Winnebago here in Wisconsin. Big featureless bowls, and they can be really overwhelming lakes. You see the talent of the lake and how good the fishery is during the early part of the year, and a lot of times in the fall as well. But during the summer months, it seems like those fish just vacate. So the question is, where do they go? What do they do? Well, in a lot of those lakes that don't have much contour to them, where there's no specific good holding areas, those fish will spread out and they become roaming fish and suspending fish, which, as we all know, are really difficult fish to routinely come in contact with. On a lake like St. Clair, people consider it one of the greatest smallmouth fisheries in the country. But I can tell you guys, it's pretty easy to go out there and not catch a fish. I think a lot of people, what they do is they go out and they fish the boat pattern. You go out there and you find a group of boats, you get in the middle of it, and there's a school of fish there. But if you go out there on your own and you avoid trying to find boats, or if you go out there and there's no boats out there, I think a lot of people will quickly find that you can zero pretty quick on that lake. It almost feels like there's not a fish around. And there's a lot of lakes in the country that are similar to that for all the species of bass. So for me, I've got a pretty simple process that really helps me break these big lakes down. The problem is it's time consuming. So the first thing that I do is I get on the big motor and I just start idling. I use my Lowrance graphs and I'm just looking at side scanning and looking at everything that I can find. And what I'm looking for, and this is the number one thing that I'm looking for, is any sort of small piece of structure. A lot of these lakes you can idle for miles and it's just sand flat. I mean, there's nothing, no rock, no depth change, no grass, there's nothing. But there's always something. So what I mean by that is, if you're idling long enough, you can find an isolated single rock, and that rock doesn't have to be any bigger than a basketball. But you sometimes find an isolated rock. Sometimes it's not even a rock. Sometimes it's a cement, like 5-gallon bucket that was used to moor a boat down at some point. Sometimes it's a stump. Sometimes it's a single log that's floated out. I've caught fish off lawn chairs. Anything that's on the bottom of the lake that is not the normal monotonous sand bottom, you should mark. I will almost guarantee you that you can find a fish. And if you graph long enough, you will almost always find little clumps of rock or, little clumps of gravel in these sand flats. I can tell you on Lake Winnebago, that's a really good thing. There's a lot of small isolated rock piles And when I say small, I'm talking the size of a boat. And if you can find those are the objects that you're looking for. You know, there's really very, very little rock in St. Clair. There are a few little areas where you can get into it. But, you know, on St. Clair, I've caught fish. I caught fish off a lawn chair. I've caught fish off sunken boats. That type of stuff is what you're looking for. The problem is you got to idle for long periods of time. I mean, you can idle for an hour and find one object. Well, that one object may be good for one fish all the time, but that's not going to make for great fishing. Now, the bonus to this is if you put your time in, the majority of those objects are not ever moving again. So if you spend the time graphing, you could find 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, objects, and all of a sudden now you have 30 really good places to catch a fish off of that most people don't know about. So, not only are they not pressured, you kind of got them to yourself. So if you're in a tournament, you can leave that stuff till the end of the day, knowing that nobody else probably fished it. So you gotta use your graphs. You gotta look around. The other thing, so the second thing I'm looking for while I'm graphing is bait. A lot of times you'll have roaming bait, and you'll find areas of the lake that just have a lot more bait. And I can assure you that if you find the bait, the fish are not far behind, whether that's bass, perch that the bass are feeding on, walleye, whatever species it is that you're looking for. If they feed on bait fish, they're going to be nearby the biggest grouping of bait. And sometimes you just have to look into what the previous day's weather forecast was. If you had really strong, east winds for a week, you might want to look on the other side of the lake, because that east wind was blowing bait fish into the west shore. So the west shore might be where you want to start your graphing. But you got to know where the bait is, and that's a huge key as well. The last factor is looking for, weed while you're going around. Almost every lake in the country has some sort of grass. Now, you get into the Ozark region, you don't get it, but a lot of lakes in the country have grass, and it's specifically these big bowls, these big, very featureless lakes that I'm talking about have grass somewhere in them. So the more you can scan and look around, the greater your chance of finding some isolated clumps of weed are. And a lot of these really large lakes have grass that are pretty large, several acres in size, and can hold large populations of fish. The problem is finding a 2-acre grass patch in a lake that's thousands and thousands of acres is really tough to do. And it just comes down to getting behind the wheel and putting your time in looking. So those three things are what I'm looking for on big featureless lakes. When you find them, you've pretty much got them to yourself. And at the same time, they're going to be good from year to year to year, because things don't change that much on those lakes. When it comes to baits, you really just got to choose the baits that work best for what you're targeting. So if you're finding isolated targets, you fish them with whatever you feel comfortable with. A crankbait, a jig, a worm, you're throwing to that target. When it comes to finding the bait or finding grass, that's when like a crankbait or a swim bait really shine. It allows you to cover a lot of water and try to, find where the fish are holding in those areas. So I hope this was helpful, guys. You really just need to break those lakes down and put the time in behind the boat, and find objects that you can cast in those big featureless lakes, because there always are some things. You just got to find them. So I hope it was helpful. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, share it on your social media, and stay tuned. We have a new video coming out every day. Thanks for watching.